so Act 4 of Macbeth, Scene 1, we're back with the witches. And notice that the stage directions tell us that there's lightning again, or thunder. We're in an isolated place, and they have a cauldron. So what we're going to see here is the witches performing a spell. The first 3 lines indicate that the spirits are saying now is the time. And then in line 4, they're starting to walk around the cauldron, and they're making a potion. Round about the cauldron go, in the poisoned entrails throw, toad that under cold stone days and nights has 31. So this is a long list of the ingredients for their potion, okay? A very famous line 10 and 11, double, double, toil and trouble, fire, burn, and cauldron bubble. Notice the rhythm here. Shakespeare's worked really hard to give the witches a trochaic pattern to their speech. So it's very sing-songy. Da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. Trochaic tetrameter is what that's called. So they continue to do that. Notice there's lots of pieces of animals. Kind of gross. In line 30 and lines 30 and 32, finger of a birth-strangled babe, ditch delivered by a drab. Remember, we have a motif of dead children. So here it pops up again. So that is a child that was killed in childbirth or died in childbirth, delivered, whose mom was a prostitute, essentially. So anyway, that is all of them making their potion. Now, where Hecate comes in, that's not Shakespeare's. That was added later, so you can ignore that. Anyway, then they have another famous line, line 44, by the pricking of my thumbs, something wicked this way comes. Open locks, whoever knocks. And that's when Macbeth enters. Remember, at the end of Act 3, he's decided he needs to take matters into his own hands. He's already done that with Banquo. Now he is approaching the witches to try to get more of a handle on what he's doing. So he comes in there and he says, how now? What's going on, you secret black and midnight hags? Not very flattering. What is it that you do? In other words, what are you doing? And the witches are like, we're not telling you. And so then Macbeth tries to use force. He says, I'm asking you to answer me this question. Okay? I don't care what the risk is, and that whole speech he's giving there in lines 49 through 60. Doesn't matter what happens to me. I just want an answer. And so the witches are like, speak, demand, we'll answer, in a really cool split line. It's a triple split line. That's pretty cool. Anyway. And then they say, but tell us, do you want us to tell you, or do you want to hear it from our spirit masters? And Macbeth's like, spirits, no brainer. So they do another little potion, okay? And there's a lot of reference to our motifs, blood, violence, death in this. Pouring sow's blood that had eaten her 9 pharaoh. She ate her 9 little piglets. Murderer from the gallows. Grease, sweat, that has been sweat from a murderer. Throw it into the flame. Really kind of gross stuff, okay? Anyway, then an armed head appears out of the potion. Okay, so a head that has like a metal helmet on it. Okay? And Macbeth's like, what's going on? And they say, hey, ask him your questions. Or he knows what you're thinking. Don't ask him anything. Just listen to what he says. Okay, so they're commanding Macbeth, essentially. So here's what the first apparition says. Macbeth, 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 beware Macduff. Beware the Thane of Fife. Dismiss me enough. So Macduff is the Thane of Fife. Remember, we've already seen that conflict set up between Macbeth and Macduff from earlier at the end of Act 2, whenever Macduff doesn't go to Scone to see Macbeth crowned. And also we hear the reference later that Macbeth asked Macduff to come to his castle, and Macduff refused. So Macduff has drawn the line. He says, I am not with you, Macbeth. Okay, so the spirit says, Macbeth, you better watch out for Macduff. Okay, he's bad news for you. You think that'd be a big clue. So Macbeth is like, yeah, I already kind of suspected him, but, thanks for confirming what I already thought. But he's like, hey, I want to ask you one more thing. And the witches are like, you can't tell him what to do. Here's another spirit. So the second apparition comes up, and it's a bloody child. And think about how difficult this would be in Shakespeare's time to actually perform this on the stage. So you might actually have to be using imagination if you were in the audience at this point. Anyway, it goes with our motif, dead children. And here's what the second apparition says. Macbeth, Macbeth, Macbeth. He's like, I hear you. And he says, be bloody, bold, and resolute. So he's giving him security. Laugh to scorn the power of man. So nothing's going to hurt you, Macbeth. For none of woman born shall harm Macbeth. All right, so they're giving him this sense of security. First they said, whoa, watch out for Macbeth. But now the second one's like, Macbeth, you don't have to worry. Nobody born of woman can hurt you. Well, I mean, that seems ridiculous because everybody's born of woman. That's how we get here. They didn't have cloning, all right? You were born of a woman. And so Macbeth's like, well, then what do I have to worry about Macbeth for? Because obviously he was born of woman. But he says, just to be sure, I'm going to kill him anyway. Okay, so then there's thunder and the third apparition. Now this third apparition is really all about King James. Okay, so the third apparition is a child again, but it's crowned, okay, representing kings and royalty, and it's got a tree in its hand. And Macbeth's like, what is this? And they're like, we told you not to talk. And so anyway, he says this, be lion-mettled proud and take no care who chafes, who frets, or where conspirers are. Macbeth shall never be vanquished until great Birnam Wood to high Dunsinane Hill shall come against him. So what all that means is this, Macbeth, stop worrying about everything. You are going to be fine until the forest, and the forest is called Birnam Wood. Okay, you've heard of Robin Hood, and he lived in Sherwood Forest. That's how they name forests. So until Birnam Wood, this forest comes to Dunsinane, which is where Macbeth's castle is, you don't need to worry. And Macbeth is like, so I don't need to worry because nobody who's born of woman can hurt me. And I especially don't need to worry until that forest comes to my castle. Forests don't move. So I'm feeling pretty good about myself now. Okay? So then he asks one more question. Will his sons really get to be king? And the witches say, basically, you don't need to ask this, but he's like, no, I need to know. Okay, so they're like, fine, we'll show you. So then we have, out of the pot, essentially, a show of 8 kings. And the last one has a glass in his hand, and then Banquo's ghost is at the end. Now, what probably happened is that this glass, whenever Shakespeare was performing it, he held up to King James. All right, because this is the long line of, these are supposed to be Banquo's ancestors and all of the kings that would come from Banquo. And the last one has 2 orbs, and that represented King James. Okay? And that's the one holding that mirror too. So, just FYI. All right, so then again, Macbeth goes into one of his trances. He's wrapped, and they're like, what's going on? So they do a little dance, pure entertainment, and then they disappear. Macbeth's like, where'd they go? And Macbeth's like, Lennox came up, and he's like, hey, what's going on? Macbeth's like, you didn't see the witches? No, I didn't. Anyway, then Lennox comes to tell him, hey, by the way, Macbeth has run away to England. And Macbeth says, oh, he knew I was going to come after him. And so then he makes a very important commitment in line 145. From this moment, okay, remember this whole play he's been trying to decide, do I just let fate handle things or do I take things into control? And here he decides, and this marks him for the rest of the play. He does not waver from this. He says, from this moment, the very firstlings of my heart shall be the firstlings of my hand. And what that means is, as soon as I think it or feel it, I do it. None of this, oh, should I do it? Should I not do it? What's right? What's wrong? I think it, I do it. Okay, that's what he decides. And so then he says, I'm going to go attack Macduff's castle. Even though he's not there, I'm going to go kill his wife and his kid and his servants. So we see that Macbeth, remember back in Act 1, he was still like, I don't want to kill the king. He's my buddy. I appreciate him. So he had this sense of goodness. That's gone now. Okay, so no more. That brings us then to scene 2. This is in Lady Macduff's castle, and in fact, Lady Macduff, besides the witches, is the only real female character that we get to see, so it's an interesting contrast between Lady Macduff and Lady Macbeth. Interesting to kind of look at those two. Anyway, Ross is there, and he's like, hey, you need to get out of here, and she's like, no, I'm not going to. She's really upset at Macduff, and then she and her son have this very comedic, witty banter between them. Then a messenger shows up, and he's like, hey, you need to get out of here. And she's like, where am I going to go? And she doesn't have time to really even do that because murderers show up. And they say really kind of funny insults to the son and then kill him, of course. And the son's like, he's killed me, mother. Anyway, they all get killed. That brings you to scene 3. Now, scene 3 is really interesting. Macduff has actually gone to England, not just because he was afraid of Macbeth. He heard that Malcolm was there raising an army. And so what Macduff wants to do is find out if Malcolm is actually worthy to lead Scotland, and if he is, to join forces with him. And so there's this test. Now what happens is Malcolm decides to test Macduff because he's not in a real trustworthy mood either. And so he basically goes through this thing where he's telling him, I'm horrible. I'd be an awful king. You don't want me. I'd sleep with all your women. I'd take all your money. I'd take all your property. I'm given to lies and deceit, etc. And so finally Macduff is like, you're right. We don't want you. That's awful. And then Malcolm's like, I'm just kidding. I was lying to you there. I was testing you, but really I'm none of those things. So they make a pact. Okay, we'll work together. We'll revive Scotland. But then they come in and they tell Macduff, hey, by the way, your family's just been killed. And so Macduff mourns that in a very interesting way. He talks about it being manly to actually have feelings and to grieve. So that's an interesting contrast from what we've seen between Macbeth and Lady Macbeth and what they've talked about in relation to femininity and masculinity. So if you're interested in that, look at how he responds to the death of his family. All right, and that ends Act 4.